You are listening to Indie Radio, where we do content the indie way.
Four minutes left. Three minutes left. 2 minutes. One minute. Thirty seconds. Ten seconds. 9,
Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Infectious Geek. This is Tory, your host, and I am really stoked about this episode. So, we have a special guest. Her name is Ashley, and she is a criminal investigator. And we are going to be talking about mental illness. So, this is going to be great. So, Kirk, Kirk, this is my co-host Kirk. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
You're on mute.
Oh, shit.
Oh,
Hold on a
okay.
second.
How are you? No, you're not. You're not on mute. I was just kidding.
Okay.
How are you tonight?
Good.
Good? Okay,
Yep.
good. Yeah, this is a subject that's near and dear to your heart, right?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah. So this was your idea, so thank you for coming up with this. And we have our other awesome co-host, Kinte. Hi, Kinte. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, and I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. We're happy to have you. And another special guest, we have Micah. Hi,
Hello. How are you?
Micah. Good. How are you?
I'm all right.
How was your day?
Long and tiring and hot, but it's over.
Yeah. So
And
you have some experience with mental illness too, correct?
yeah.
Awesome. So we're gonna weigh in on. I thought we could talk about the stigma that mental illness has on society, and I want to start with bringing up the fact that America has this stigma against people who have mental illness because they don't understand what it is, so they persecute against it. And I thought that it would be interesting to get everybody's point of view. So we're going to start with Ashley. What do you think the stigma is in this whole country?
Well, I mean, there's definitely a stigma, even though we say that we're breaking it and that it's getting better. It is in some ways. I will say that the younger generation is pretty good at being more public about it and making sure that you know that it's okay to seek help, it's okay to talk about this, and that there shouldn't be any stigma attached. I will say there's certain cultures and generations that are still more resistant to it because it's just not as openly talked about within their cultures and backgrounds. I would also say that for men, there's still a little bit more stigma behind, why they won't seek it as readily as sometimes females and non-binary people. And then we also have, certain career fields because like you had mentioned, I work in sort of the law enforcement criminal investigations. And, if people have a clearance or a gun and a badge, they feel as if they can't seek assistance sometimes or else they'll lose their job. And so I do still see a stigma out there in many different ways. And so I think addressing this is a great thing that you guys are doing on this podcast. And it definitely needs addressed in sort of different avenues and different ways so that we can sort of break it so that people don't have that stigma anymore because it really shouldn't be there.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So, Kirk, what do you think about the stigma in your life? Like, have people persecuted you or judged you because of what you've been going through?
Yeah, strangely enough, it's mostly been in my family, where I've gotten the stigma. It's my older brother and my other sister. So I think the huge stigma is people can't see it. You're not like in a cast. You're not like, it's not like you're in a hospital bed or whatever. I mean, it just people can't understand what's wrong because they can't see it.
Right.
And
I think that's a good point.
A lot of people have that prejudice. So, and I've gotten the question is, what have you got to be depressed about? And the same, the thing with, Hold on a second. Why? I just lost my thought. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Come back to it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We'll come back to you. Maybe your thought will come back whenever you're not thinking about it so much. Kinte, what do you think? Is there any stigma in your family or friends or community?
Yeah, I would agree that there is. But it seems like over the last several years, the understanding is getting better, and you hear more people talking about it, and it's become kind of a thing that is really talked about this day and age. So I don't know that. I mean, I think it's always going to be there a stigma, but it seems like it's doing. It seems like it's better. I don't know. Uh, I mean, just from my layman point of view.
Right. What do you think, Micah?
Well, it's kind of like what Kurt was just saying. It tends to be not you can't see it per se. My father, he refused to believe it. The technology is getting a little bit better with how they diagnose stuff. I think it is a problem that should be addressed. A lot of people are biased to the fact that they just don't want to believe it. But it is an issue. I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 8 before they really even knew what it was. There weren't the tests that they have nowadays, but I think it's becoming, it's getting more light shed upon it. But it isn't an issue. Absolutely.
I think that one of the things that people associate with mental illness is medication. Like it's the end all cure, or they abuse the medication, or they don't take their medication. I think that that's a big point to make too. Like when you're diagnosed with a mental illness, it doesn't matter which one it is, you have to take your medication. And to there's a point where you take it and you feel good, so you're like, oh, I don't need it because I feel good, and then you stop taking it. And that's a really good it's a really bad way to get off your rails. And like I think that especially with ADD, like in ADHD, like um the medication that you use has street value. So like, and some of these drugs all have street value, like Xanax and Klonopin and all that stuff. Like it's used for a good purpose, but it's abused because people obviously are addicts and whatnot. So where's the line? Where's the line where that you should need it and take it, and when you should abuse it? I like to I would like to ask Ashley about that. Sorry.
It's fine. No, I actually just did presentations recently on this. It is hard to tell, especially in sometimes younger people, the teens and stuff, because some of it presents as normal teenage behavior. And so it's hard for people to really understand, well, are they dealing with a mental illness, or is this just normal teenage behavior? And even in adults, are they just having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month? But what I usually tell people is that whenever it's starting to affect your normal life, and it is affecting it in a negative way, and you just can't seem to pull yourself out of it, and it just keeps getting longer and longer and longer, and your issues just keep compounding, that's really when I would then sort of seek assistance. And when it comes to the medications, I don't believe that people are honestly taught what they should be asking these professionals, the mental health professionals that are going to potentially look at the medications for them, because some of them can have really, really bad withdrawal symptoms, especially some of the SSRIs. And so whenever you do decide to go on medication, two of the different things I do always like to tell people is that to talk with a mental health professional you're working with to see when you're going to have a follow-up to see if this is working. Usually about a month to 3 months in is usually good. And then after that, maybe 6 months. But you definitely want to have check-ins with your mental health professional. Let them know how it's going. Really be an advocate for yourself if you think it's working or if it's not. And also, before you even start medication, ask them what the regimen will be to get off of it, because you may have to just start cutting back the dose. Some don't get out of your system for a year or more. It can still be in your system, and some of those withdrawal symptoms can actually mimic addiction withdrawal. And so asking the right questions for this is imperative whenever you're talking with a mental health professional. And also always get another opinion before you start stuff. Talk to another professional. It could be your primary care physician, because they may also know, but just talk to another person before you sort of start taking anything, to just get a second opinion to make sure it might be what you want to go forward with.
That's very good points.
Another problem with the medication is, and say like you're starting to feel better, you don't know whether it's the medication that's doing it or whether it's the way you're living your life that's doing it. And that's always been the problem I've had with medication. And I've been taking it, well, the regimen I'm on not right now, I've been taking it for so long. It's almost like a placebo or whatever. It's just and also there's some drugs out there that are with the insurance that are priced way too high. Like there's one they've been trying to get me on called Abilify, but my insurance won't take care of it because it's priced way too high. And I've always, and throughout the years, always had problems with medication, knowing whether they're working or not, or the right kind or whatever. I just kind of frustrated right now, actually.
Yeah, I can feel your frustration. Micah, you had something to say.
Well, I think a lot of the medication is it takes time to build up into your system too for it to be effective. Medication that I've been prescribed over the past, I was expecting an immediate result, within a short amount of time, and it hadn't had time. It didn't have time to build up into your system, and everybody's body is different. So medication that may work for somebody like me or somebody else may not work for the next person. I also think that these doctors are too they're I don't know how you would say it, but I think they're too fast on writing prescriptions.
Pill pushers.
Getting
That's a lot of them. That's what a lot of them are, and you really have to sort through finding the right psychiatrist. It's really important, and one who'll talk to you. And because I've come across several who just basically had their head down and just writing out a prescription. And if you encounter anybody like that, just walk out the door. I mean, because they're not helping.
I think a lot of these people are seeing they're seeing a psychiatrist. They should be seeing a psychologist. A lot of the issues may not be something that they should be being treated with medication versus somebody that like a psychologist in his field.
Yeah, I'm currently seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist. So
yeah, so am I. And I think you guys are right about the pill pusher aspect. Kente, did you have anything to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, man, they putting people on drugs for everything. I mean, if you can't sleep, they got something for that. If you can't walk straight, they got something for that. Kids be 2 months. Kids be 2 months, and they trying to put them on something. It's really ridiculous. And a lot of them, they get paid. they get paid to prescribe. So, do you really need it, or they just see it as a come up?
Right. And
Yeah.
Abilify is $700
Yeah,
without insurance.
it's
So
insane.
it's
It's insane.
incredibly expensive, and there's no reason for it. But like,
Yeah.
it's like taking blood pressure medication. It's like taking heart pill medication. Like
Well,
you have,
a brain is just, it's just another internal organ.
yeah,
It taking stuff for the heart or taking stuff for anything. That's how I've always explained it to people. But I don't know. I just
Well,
yeah,
these companies out here, like these medication companies and these doctors, that's their job, though. So their main objective is to make a profit. Obviously, with these medications, and there are insurances that cover a lot of it, but I think that's a big problem too. Is not there's not so much that you can utilize out there to, you know, get the cost down on it. There is some, but it's very expensive. And I think that there are other ways you can go about it, but it is a problem. Yeah.
yeah. So okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the different disorders, and I think Ashley can weigh in on this a lot. Like, let's explain a couple main stuff, like when you have depression, or when you might be bipolar, or when you might have high anxiety, or something like that. What are some signs that you should look for in your everyday life that may indicate that you need to go see a psychiatrist?
Each of those are going to be different. But again, like I went back to when it's actually affecting your life in a negative way. But sometimes while people are in it, they really don't understand that they're actually going down a negative pathway, because they may keep thinking, well, tomorrow I'll get better. This is just a bad month for me. Or as we're in COVID, it's just been a bad year. But when it starts to negatively affect you, you're not really enjoying the same things that you used to. You're starting to withdraw from your friends and family. You may be using other addictive behaviors to help cope. And that could just be you're upping your junk food, or you're turning to caffeine and you can't sleep now. And all these negative things are happening. So it's when it really gets to a point where it's affecting you in a negative way. But when you can't see that, that's where I always tell people that if you have a friend or a family member who just isn't themselves, don't be afraid to ask them, hey, I noticed you just don't seem like yourself. Tell me about that. Ask it in a very open-ended, non-judgmental way and see what they say. Because sometimes us just addressing the fact that we see changes in someone and that we're a little bit concerned about it, that's sometimes what it takes for people to realize, okay, maybe this isn't my normal depression or normal anxiety that I can normally handle. When other people are seeing it, maybe it's time for me to really think about what I want to move forward with. Even if it's doing like mindfulness stuff, and like there's also more, they're doing stuff with like ketamine and psilocybin and more of the natural medicines as well. And so that's where I always say people that if you see it negatively affecting your life and your life isn't what you want it to be, and you've tried different things and you can't pull yourself out of it, seek some assistance, just to at least try to see what's out there. And also, if you have a friend, family member, coworker who doesn't seem like themselves, don't shy away, don't push them away. Just really just let them know that you care. And hey, I've seen a little bit of change in your behavior. Tell me about what's going on. And really just be that caring, compassionate person.
But
Right.
Ashley, but Ashley, give some advice for fellas who their girlfriend or their wives are acting like that, and a way that a guy can communicate that without being put on the couch.
Yes. Well, I can give you some, but it really depends on the person who's on the receiving end. But essentially, you want to address it in a place where they seem to be a little bit better that day, or in a better mood, to where you can approach it and just say, hey, I really care about you. And so I wanted to talk about something with you. Would you be willing to talk? Giving them choices as to whether they want to talk at that time or not sometimes helps. Because they feel more in control, more in power. If you just even give them the choice, like, hey, can we talk right now? And if they say no, then you don't want to do it at that time. If they say yes, then you just say, you know, I'm coming from a place of care and concern or compassion for you. And so, you know, I just wanted to say, like, I've seen some things and just wanted to really talk about them with you. Like, how are you doing right now? Tell me about this. And if it's really, if you can use things that are happening, but not attribute it to that person, that's better. So not attributing any negative acts to them as a person, but to what happened. So for example, if they are always showing up late or not going into work, calling out sick, stick to the facts. Like I've noticed that when we schedule things, there's a bit of an issue with showing up on time. Tell me about what's behind that. Or if they're calling out sick a lot of times at work, just say, I've noticed that you're using more sick days, not attributing anything negative like, yo, you're just not going to work or you're just always late. Like, what's your deal? So you really have to try to like stick to just the facts and not attributing any judgment or shame to them, but just what the behaviors are that you're seeing. And again, sometimes they'll be receptive and sometimes they just won't. And that's where all you can do is continue to be compassionate and caring for them. And hopefully they'll come around at some time and you'll get off the couch.
Now, if it don't work, Ashley, I'm going to stay on your couch.
You got it. That's all the psychology training I got. Like that's what they tell us to do. So my background's psychology. And yeah, but really just making sure that you're not attributing it to them personally and just the facts as best you can. So I always tell people like really think about what you want to say before you just pop in and talk to this person, because how you word stuff really does affect how that conversation is going to go.
I completely agree with that. So, all right. So I want to like switch gears a little bit and I want to talk about mental illness in the pandemic. So a lot of us have been cooped up like I have. I'm in quarantine right now. I've been in quarantine for almost 2 weeks. And it's been, I mean, it hasn't been that bad, but being stuck in a room for 2 weeks really sucks. And you know, Ashley and I were talking about this when we were talking about the show, like how some people really thrive in this environment. They like to be at home. They don't want to be out. They like to be isolated. And then other people are getting depressed and have high anxiety and stuff like that. So like has anybody here experienced anything with the quarantine? Let's throw that question out there.
Yeah. I was diagnosed with COVID in December. And I was out for like 2.5 weeks. And during that time, my grandmother passed away and my dad passed away. And my dad had Alzheimer's, and he had a really bad episode where they had to take him to the hospital. And they say he contracted COVID in the hospital, but I'm not sure. I really don't know. But he ended up passing away in the hospital. And the idea of not being able to see somebody, you know, or yeah, it just really got to me. I just lost it during that time, and I honestly felt. I mean, it's one of the first times I honestly felt that I didn't want to live, and because when you have COVID and it's you can't even move, and it's all the symptoms of a flu without actually a fever, but it's still and it's just the feeling of helplessness is unreal. It just but I got through it with friends and and time actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Has anybody else experienced any kind of change in their personality? Like they weren't necessarily themselves 100%.
I mean, I had it. Um, it wasn't like I said that quite a few people. The worst part about it was that I couldn't taste anything. That was what bothered me the most. In Kirk, I'm sorry about your loss, too. By the way, for me, I'm in my 30s. It didn't really affect me as it did in May. Other people, but here in Florida, everything has been opened up, and it's not really a problem down here. And I think a lot of it is politicized way too much. Um, and I think that these people, not to get into politics, but these, Americans have to get back to work. You know what I mean? So all this on top of your daily problems is, it just makes things worse. And if you have a mental illness, then it didn't really affect me or the people that I know so much. Like I said, here it's not really a problem, but I can see where it is on other places around the country, maybe. But.
I mean, you made a really good point whenever you said, like, my thought just jumped out of my head too. Whenever you were talking about like, when people, dang, I just totally lost whatever I was going to say. All right, so the political part about it is, yeah, that's where I wanted to go. The political part about it is people are the propaganda is scaring you, right?
Yeah.
So everybody on TV is telling you, oh, all these people are dying, and like you watch the news and you're like, oh my god, like this is really bad. And then you might not experience it firsthand, but I knew a lot of people who contracted COVID or their family members did, or it affected people's families. Whole generations died. Like it was bad, and then other people never experienced it at all. So like, I think that the media had a lot to do with hyping everybody up to be so scared.
You got to remember that the media is, you can't believe anything. The media is completely, it's very left wing. I'm not, downgrading anybody that's a Democrat or a Republican. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just the media. Everybody knows that they don't tell the truth. They're going to make a mountain out of a molehill. It's not, when you get tested for COVID, how they get these numbers is pretty ridiculous. You go and you get tested, and you test, let's say you test positive, okay? Then they're going to give you a follow-up, make sure that is correct. Then you get tested, and you go and you get tested positive again. They get 2 cases out of just one person. And there are some other ones too. I can't remember what it was, but these numbers are not accurate by any means. And it's not as bad as things are made, as the media makes it out to be. So I would suggest not believing anything, that you hear on TV or in the newspaper. It's a propaganda machine, and it's made to make these people worry a whole lot more than they are. So I typically just don't believe anything I hear or see on TV in general.
Right. Did you have anything to say, Kente?
It's those dang Democrats. No, I mean, look, yes, it's real, right? COVID is real. I thank God I never got it, and I'm doing everything to make sure I don't. But I think both things are true. I do believe that it's real, and we need to take precautions and all of that kind of stuff. But then I also believe that it is a hype, and then there is benefits to scaring the public. So, I'm not going to get into the V word that everybody wants you to take, but but I'll say that both things are true. It is real. It needs to be taken serious. I know people who've died from it. I know people whose life's been altered by having it, and they still ain't right, and it's been months later. So, but then I also believe there's been a feeding frenzy with the media to scare people because that's what gets clicks and whatnot as well. So both can be true. The truth is that not only has people died from COVID or their health has been altered, but then many businesses have failed because of it.
Yeah.
People have lost so much. I know people who opened up a restaurant like 2 months before, and then all of a sudden now, because you guys know if you've opened up a restaurant, that first year is huge. And then basically their dream is gone because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I mean, and there's so many businesses that are gone, and these people are not getting bailouts, and it's just sad. It's sad, and I mean, some people can say, well, it's not a health issue, but it very well is. There's people that killing themselves. Talking
Yeah.
about going back to the mental illness, is people are killing themselves over the effects of COVID, not necessarily the health benefits, but I mean negativity, but what it's done to their businesses, and they can't provide for their families, and the suicide rate is up high, and there's the depression from having to be stuck in, and then there's a lot of couples that are now forced to actually spend every day with each other, and they realize, oh my God, who am I married to? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's how many there's COVID babies, but then there's also COVID divorces. And it's this real ugly, horrible thing. And it's gonna forever, like, how like 9/11 totally changed the world, right? I mean, I remember, I don't know, I'm about to show my age, but do you remember when you used to go to the airport and you could walk someone all the way up to the
Yeah.
to the actual plane and hug them, and what 9/11 happened, that's gone, and a bunch of other things as well. This is kind of like a 9/11 in another kind of way, where there's these changes that are coming, and it's going to change the way that we do life, and we have to get ready for it. So things will never be the same. And if you think about it like this, and I'll get off my soapbox, whether you believe in God or not, God gave us this wonderful planet that we all live on, and man has totally effed it up to the point where we have to wear masks to walk down the street. Just think about that. Like, that is, we were blessed with having this wonderful planet that we live on, and now we live in this world where we have to wear masks, and we have to, you can't even see if somebody's smiling at you because they got a goddamn mask on. I mean, it's important to have the mask, but the point is, when are we going to, as a society, going to really truly protect the planet that we live on?
Right.
And so I'll get off my soapbox.
Oh no, it was a great soapbox. I love the soapbox. So you made some really good points about like the side effects of the pandemic, the restaurants closing, the people losing their businesses, the depression, the anxiety, and people committing suicide. The suicide rate is really high. People who are on unemployment because they can't go back to work because there is no work, or they don't want to go back to work because they're getting unemployment and they're making more money doing that than they did working. So there's a whole slew of issues in every economic tier, from the rich to the poor. Everybody's affected by it. And mentally, some people just can't handle what's going on, especially like you said, all of a sudden you're stuck with your family and kids are being homeschooled, and you're stuck with the kids, and the stresses of being stuck with the kids for as long as they are, and the fact that kids aren't getting a good enough education now because they're not in school, and all that stuff is just detrimental to society as a whole. So like, I think honestly, like, we have to take a really good look at how to handle people that are going through this is traumatic experiences that we're going through, people dying. Like, this is not just to be taking lightly, and like uh I don't think anybody has really talked about how people are doing mentally, like there's no that's not talked about in the news. And I wanted to ask Ashley about that. So what do you think that we can do as like to raise awareness about this, like to get the word out that maybe these are the times that we need to band together and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, they are talking about it because a lot of people are having to do research around what the mental health effects of the pandemic are. And it's actually facilitated a lot of research to happen way more than it would have because they can cut red tape and start really in real time studying what's affecting people. And, I will say, interesting study that ties back to the 9/11 thing. And this is where I think we are not really realizing how our energy sometimes affects others around us too, is that, we're in this pandemic and you have all these issues and all this stress. And so stress in and of itself isn't that awful, but it's when it keeps piling up. And that's what the pandemic is doing. You're taking one hit after another, after another. You're in these families where men are doing more housework and child duties now. So men are stepping up during the pandemic for their families. Women are getting it worse because they're trying to work, homeschool, do all this stuff at one time. And so you're seeing those effects. But the one thing about 9/11 is they found that the people who psychologically did better after this happened had healthy relationships. And so they were coming home to a spouse or families who were like, hey, how was your day? What do you need right now? Do you need 15 minutes before I talk to you and tell you about what the kids did or what we need to get done here? What do you need? And they had supportive partners and friends and stuff. And so the pandemic has sort of ripped some of that apart. You don't see your friends as much. You may not be talking to them as much. You still can, but it's not the same as you had. And for some people, they're kind of losing that connection as well, which could help them come out of this a little bit better. And some are really loving it and they are doing more Zooms and they do feel more connected, but it just really depends. But as these stressors build up and build up, if I'm stressed and I'm interacting with Tory and I stress her out, then she reacts off of my energy. And so when people are trapped in these houses or in these environments where a lot of people are stressed, how do we really calm ourselves down and be able to present in an environment that's actually helpful for all of us? And that's what we're seeing is people are trying their best, but there's just so much going on now that we really need to pause, take a step back and say, how can we help ourselves? But how can we also help those around us that are there so that we're not creating more issues within our home or our friends or families? And so I think connection's a really good thing, but also just looking at how your energy is affecting those around you and how you can support each other through this.
And Ashley, I want to ask you a question. I guess you could say that this is detrimental to people that don't have a common mental illness. That this is kind of like an issue that's going to cause everybody to have some kind of, it's going to cause some kind of mental stress on them, as a family. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, they're actually saying that people who had no mental health issues pre-COVID, the numbers are pretty high that they're developing them now.
Yeah.
And so those may be other people who also don't even realize it's happening until it gets to that critical point where they're at rock bottom, or their family has just been like, I'm done with you, or their friends just totally abandon them. And then they finally may seek help. But no, there's actually numbers that say that a good majority of people that are now seeking help had no mental health issues pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. And so now they're attributing it to things that have happened during the pandemic that are possible, precursors to, to causing a mental illness. We're also seeing weird psychotic symptoms in people who actually had COVID, and they're lasting past the time that they are, COVID free. And months later, they're actually there's a lot of psychotic hallucinations and things that are happening. And these people never had any of this before, and they don't know how to deal with it. And it's really frightening for them. So I also don't know, I mean, because the research is still new, if COVID has actually caused these or what's causing this, but they're actually seeing hallucinations and stuff happening even once they've become COVID free. And
I mean,
so
if it's a spike in these numbers, I mean, I don't know how you can contribute it to anything other than that, like you're saying.
Kirk, did you ever experience hallucinations after you've had COVID?
No, I never did. No,
Okay. I was just curious because
no.
has it affected you mentally in any way?
Well, I mean, as far as what I went through and what was going on around me, I think affected me more than the actual COVID. Not being able to do anything. I mean, the actual COVID. I once it got out of my system, I had no problems.
Okay. All right. I know you have to go in a minute, Ashley. I just wanted to ask you one more question about the people that are thriving in this environment. Like you said, that there are some people that prefer to be locked in and to be, you know, a recluse, and they like it. Is there any numbers with that? Like, have you seen any research about that?
I don't know if I've seen any research. I'm just basing this off of some psychologists and psychiatrists that I've worked with, and also just some clients that I also have. Some people are loving it. You know, they have social anxiety, they have, you know, normal anxiety, they have depression, or they're interacting on a daily basis, potentially at work, with toxic people. And so for some, it's removed them from some of those triggers that actually were causing their issues to be, you know, hyped up or just harder for them to manage. And so now they've come down to a manageable level where we probably wouldn't say that they now have, you know, diagnosable disorders or any sort of mental health issues, and they're able to handle them without medication on their own. And this has removed them from that. And so they're loving it. You know, I also do know that it has helped people say no to a lot of things. You know, those people who also like to please and like to do things all the time and always are saying yes, and it causes more stress. People are learning how to set boundaries as well. And we're seeing that that's also helping them as well. Like, hey, I just don't want to. And they're feeling more empowered to really do what they need to do to also take care of themselves as well, beyond just setting boundaries. And so there are some people who are thriving. Now, I can't say when they have to finally go back to work and go out into the normal world, normal, however we want to put it, if they will then revert back to where they need some assistance or not. But some people right now are actually loving it and doing better than they were before.
You know, something that's helped a lot of people is actually getting a pet. A lot of people, because there's a lot of people who work a lot and normally didn't want to have a pet because of having to take care of them, and then they have to work. So then, because a lot of businesses have shifted to work at home, they got a pet, like a dog or even a cat. Ugh, cat. Ugh. and, and that's really helped them. There was this comedian I just saw on a show. His name escapes me, and he was talking about how he was really lonely, and because he's on the road a lot, he always wanted a dog, but he never would get one because he's on the road for so long. And he picked up a dog, and he's like, it totally saved him through his COVID loneliness, was this dog that he got. And I've heard that from quite a bit of people. So some of you guys out there, maybe that might be the ticket is, you know, to have, you know, I'm looking to get a dog myself too. So, yeah. So not because I'm lonely and I'm about to, you know, but I've been wanting to get another dog for a while. So anybody got one for me, let me know. You know, but so that could help too, getting a pet. One pet I wouldn't get is because I had a dog that died a couple of years ago. So then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to something easier. and I was looking into getting getting fish. Hell no, that's a job.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a job. When the guy was, I didn't really know, right? Because I never had one, and the guy was explaining like what you need to do, and I'm like, that sounds like work. Like I don't want another
Yeah,
job.
you gotta clean the tank out, empty the water and do all that crap. Yeah.
No, no. Unless I could, maybe if I just pay a cleaner to come do it. I didn't even want to do that. I just want to have the pretty fish floating around. I didn't want to do all the work that comes with it. But anyway, that's me.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
I think that that was a really good point. Like, these are things that little silver lining on this COVID cloud. I did a creative journalism class today, and she asked us to write a letter to somebody, and the letter was to talk about COVID and how it affected you, but to talk about something positive that came out of the COVID experience, right? And so I was like, man, I don't know. I was in jail most of the time. And then I realized that, like, so because of COVID, I got put on workforce to make the masks that everybody wore in the jail, right? And because I made the masks, I got my fines paid for. So, like, it was a really good positive spin on that, because it was like $4,000 in fines that the city paid for because I made these masks, So, like, there are like positive things about the COVID. Has anybody else experienced anything positive about the pandemic?
Just as a side note, I'm mad that Tory didn't make me a mask.
I did. I have a mask. I can mail it to you.
Okay.
I have one that I made. But yeah, does anybody else have any experience with sorry about the anyway, so yeah, does anybody else have a positive experience that they have experienced during the pandemic?
Well, personally, I haven't myself, but I know one of my clients financially has, done very well. He's in the sign business, and he puts up a lot of those plexiglass dividers that you see around registers, and he's made a killing off of it. So I mean, I guess you could consider that, something positive. I mean, he's making a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, all these businesses like masks, they were not very lucrative, but I mean they were, but in the medical field, but now everybody wore them, and like, there's different businesses that are definitely thriving because of this, even though there's businesses that aren't, obviously.
I'll say there is a positive. Oh, go ahead, Kurt.
I guess I'm lucky because I have a job. Through the whole thing, I work at a grocery store, so, and it's kind of something to experience a pandemic through a grocery store and see how the people act and stuff. Sometimes it's frightening.
Food you talked about. Always talk about hoarding food. People buying all food.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. And you talk about the news affecting everything too. There was something in the news about we're low on chickens or whatever, and people were going just nuts buying chicken, any kind of chicken. It's just it was insane. I mean, you could say anything on the news, and the next day it'll affect the sale. Just insane.
You remember the issue, Kirk, with the toilet paper?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I actually took a picture of it. In my store, it was completely barren.
Yeah,
whole aisle. It was insane. It's just
one of the
I never understood it. I never understood
it. There is one positive that we don't talk about, because everybody has to wear masks. You don't have to smell bad breath as much.
Oh yeah.
And those people have to be forced to smell their own bad breath because it keeps back at them. So I might miss the mask. That may one thing I might miss the mask, because now we're back to people's bad breath. So
yeah, definitely. I think that it would be interesting to do a show about COVID,
Right.
actually, to talk about everything. Yeah, there you go. What are those?
Oh, there's for your breath.
Okay. All right. 3 hours.
Oh yeah.
Lord.
So for 3 hours, my breath gonna be smelling great.
I have these.
Now in 3 hours, you may want me to put a mask on.
Yeah. I think there was a commercial. Like somebody had a commercial about mask breath, and they're like, "You don't want to smell your own breath." Yeah, that.
There was a commercial on that. I remember.
Yeah, when the pandemic first hit. But Ashley, I know you have to go, so I just wanted to thank you so much for being on the show. And next week we're gonna talk more about like incarceration and um the mental health industry and the jail systems and the criminal justice system, because I think that would be really interesting to talk about. So we're not doing the show next week, we're doing it the week after, right, Krinze?
Yeah, I have to go to an engagement.
Uh-oh.
Like a
Unfortunately,
real engagement or like just a function?
a real engagement where I got to get dressed up and stuff, looking all fly.
Oh, okay, nice. I want pictures.
Well, thank you all for letting me
No, I
join.
will. My
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thank you
Ashley.
guys for doing this. I hope that people get something from it, even if it's just to start the conversation around mental health and to help break those stigmas down so that people can start talking about it and start getting help if they need it. So
Absolutely.
Also, I want to make one point is there's there's words too that people throw around that I think, like, when people just blanketly call people crazy,
Yeah.
or referring to them speaking as a rant. I hate that. We use the word rant too much. Whether they ranting about. Sometimes we need to listen to people, because
Yeah.
rant is the
Also,
dismissive
also
term.
OCD.
Right.
OCD. I'm so OCD. You know, I suffered through that for a few years ago, and believe me, you don't want to go through OCD. It's absolute hell. I couldn't even leave the house.
yeah,
And
it's the same thing with bipolar. Oh, you're bipolar today.
yeah,
And they
absolutely.
use it as an adjective instead of, a term that is diagnosable, a mental health term.
And stop going back in time and wondering if somebody was bipolar. They're dead. So like I've heard somebody say, I think I started this historian talking about Abraham Lincoln. Some suspect that he was bipolar. I'm like, shut up. Okay, he was. So, like, so what?
Yeah, it seemed to function pretty well. Yeah.
Thank you, Bobby, for the background love. But so we can still talk about it a little bit more, unless you have to go. You have to do another show, right?
Yeah, and I have 5 minutes left.
Okay, so I think this was a good segue into next week's episode or the week after's episode, because I think it's going to be really good to talk about the lack of care that inmates get for mental illness and in the criminal justice system, and how different cops don't even think they have anything wrong with them. And she was saying that too, if they have a gun in a bag, they don't think anything's wrong with them. And even doctors that diagnose you, they might not see it in themselves, so like I think that's going to be a really interesting topic.
That's a big issue that needs to be
Yeah.
brought up.
Yeah.
I've been to prison and in and out of jail, and it is a big issue in there. These doctors too that are in there are hired by the Department of Corrections or by the county. They're not the best doctors out there.
No. Yeah, it's like the doctors for insurance. Yeah, if you want insurance or whatever, you get some guy in his 80s or 90s or whatever.
Yeah, some Mojo,
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna discuss this next week, but this is definitely a good leeway into it. So I want to thank you guys for being on here tonight. It was really fun. I think it was very informative, and So we'll see you guys back here next week.
Sure.
Same back
I'll
on.
be here.
Awesome. All right.
2
Thank
weeks.
you so much. Did you have something to say, Kirk? I'm sorry.
No, I said 2 weeks. You said 1 week.
2 weeks. Yes, we'll be back here in 2 weeks. And thank you guys for listening, and all the people in the chat room that were commenting. I was reading your comments, and thank you so much for giving us your feedback because we
Thank
really
you.
appreciate that. So
Mhm.
thank you guys, and we'll see you in
Take
2
care.
All right. Y'all have a good
Bye.